Good morning. Very good to see all of you this morning. I'm the manager of the Behavioural Change Program, and the Behavioural Change Program is basically about connecting community well-being and conservation outcomes. So I don't know if you are familiar with the parable of the blind man and the elephant. It's basically about several blind individuals, and they come across the elephant, and they each sort of, as they experience the elephant, the one maybe touches the trunk and then he thinks it's a snake. The other one feels the leg and thinks it's a tree. The other one touches the tusk and thinks it's a spear. And basically it's all of these different blind individuals experiencing the same elephant very differently. So this blind parable illustrates the different actors. It might be community members, conservationists, government, stakeholders. Everybody perceives a system very differently based on their position and experience. And different stakeholders experience different realities. So behavior reflects this context, not necessarily ignorance. And multiple perspectives shape one system. So each perspective can be shaped by your lived experience, your incentives, your constraints, your social and institutional context. And if we don't understand these perspectives, then we risk designing interventions that only address part of the problem. So effective conservation essentially must engage with the full system and not just one viewpoint. So I'm going to start with that with the Behavioural Change Program. I'm just trying to work this mouse. Right, so the central problem that we see is a disconnect between conservation goals and the lived realities of communities of people. So we find that often most interventions focus on visible environmental issues, but often fail to address deeper structural drivers. And these drivers might include poverty and inequality, might include limited access to opportunities, maybe limited access to land, weak or misaligned governance systems, and basically well-being constraints directly shape people's behavior. So if people, for example, face economic pressure or limited access to services, social instability, then their immediate priorities shift towards meeting their basic needs. And in this context, conservation behaviors are not prioritized. And it's not always because of a lack of awareness, because it's often because of constrained conditions. And because these drivers remain unchanged, behavior tends to revert back even after you have short-term maybe successful short-term interventions. So we can say what we often see is not necessarily the failure of people, but it's the failure to address those conditions that shape behavior. So this framework you see here represents layered conditions that enable behavior. I'm talking a little bit about behavior change, just to start about the Behavioural Change Program. So each tier builds on the one below it, and then forms a foundation for what's possible at the next level. And you can see at the base are basic human needs. It could be food, shelter, care. If these aren't met, then individuals would be primarily focused on survival. And then the next layer includes emotional, social, and family support, which provides stability. And then from there, individuals are able to develop things like their skills and financial capability. This enables movement towards employment and independence. And then at the highest level, as individuals, we can act as contributors and change agents within our communities or environment. So the key point here, looking at this framework, is that the high-level behaviors are only possible when the foundation layers are in place. If those foundations are weak, behavior change is limited and difficult to strain. So when we target the improvement of human well-being, we need to understand what it means. And it's not just one thing, it's the whole system. So you might have your sense of safety, or your spiritual well-being, family well-being, neighborhood well-being, includes personal, social, and environmental aspects. And they're obviously all connected. And if one is weak, it will affect the other. For example, poor environmental well-being will affect health and livelihoods, or you might have supportive and strong family and neighborhood well-being, and that improves your mental or spiritual well-being. So we've got to look at well-being holistically and not just in parts. And well-being is about how people, the community, and the environment function all together, not separately. So to talk about the preliminary phase of the behavioural change program, basically in 2023 and 24, there were various participatory processes, research and surveys in our communities of Covey and Kurland, participatory workshops, focus groups, discussions, and so forth. And you can see this slide presents a causal analysis of challenges in Kurland Village. The aim was to understand root causes, so not just symptoms of behaviour. And by understanding root causes, together with the community, we're able to design more targeted and meaningful interventions. And you can see here there's some examples, for example, where we've got children who see their older siblings matriculating from school, but those siblings who have matriculated don't get jobs. So then the younger siblings say, well, why should we bother? Why should we matriculate? They drop out, and then they may start hanging out in the streets, smoking dagga, maybe end up on tick. And then, of course, this has a cause and effect on all sorts of other things, increased crime, low social well-being, all sorts of things. So basically, we need to understand what is the root cause of behavior and the choices people make. So the theory of change for the behavioral change program is grounded in the participatory work we did. So it's a scientific understanding with the participatory work together. And through engagement, we worked to understand what community priorities and vision were, local challenges and lived realities, barriers and enabling factors, assets and needs. And then this informed a key shift in our programs from basically targeting behavior directly to instead addressing the drivers of behavior within this specific context. So that was our preliminary phase of the behavioral change program, and then we moved into the establishment phase, which was basically last year until now. And basically here we see the manifestation of our theory of change in a center called the Kokona Create and Connect Center. We established systems, partnerships, governance, and pilots to get this off the ground. 3 hubs, I'll explain the hubs, were designed. A center space was prepared and launched, a partner network built, basically to support the delivery across some components of the program. The governance included an advisory board that provides oversight and strategic guidance, center coordinator position, reporting to the behavioral change program, and so forth. And from the outset, we used a participatory governance model. So this means the center was not designed externally. It's implemented into the community and built from the inside out. And community members are engaged through ongoing participatory processes where their perspectives, their needs and ideas inform how the center develops and operates. So you can see that the center was basically launched in December, and you can see this is the practical implementation of our theory of change. It's based in Kurland Village. It's located next to the clinic at the center of the community. It also serves the nearby community of Covey because our participatory processes also were conducted in Covey, so it serves both communities. It started as an empty, unused building, and with the support of BITO, DT Foundation, Mungo, it's been equipped to operate as a functional community space, and includes an indoor learning space for training, workshops, and programs, and also an outdoor area, garden, where people can gather, connect, participate in activities. But we see the center, Kokona, not just as a center, it's basically like a system of interventions organized through 3 integrated hubs. The 3 hubs are the learning hub, so that's where you get educational support, academic support, adult learning resources, building of skills, training, looking at youth employability and that sort of thing. Then the community care hub, that's where health services can be provided through partners, family support, recreational activities, healthy recreational activities for youth, for example, community safety, and all sorts of things related to community care. And then the last hub is the Nature Connect hub, and that's, of course, connecting people to nature through eco-conscious living or youth engagement, getting people into nature, also looking at resource rights. Right, so the beneficiaries so far, up to now, and the outputs from 2025. So we've the early childhood beneficiaries, so preschool, We had various activities. You can read there, different cleanups and workshops in the schools and with the kids in the village. More than 60 preschool children benefited from that. Up to last year, we've actually had more numbers this year, but last year we had 445 youth participants. And I'll talk a little bit more about the Nature Credit Program at the Nature Connect Hub. But we had 16 beach and village nature credit cleanups. There was also alien clearing, restoration, and basically people got credits for training opportunities. I'll mention more about that just now. Lots of Nature Connect activities and so forth. We also did research. We did a survey to look at what kind of skills people wanted to have at the Learning Hub, and we also trained enumerators from the village to conduct that survey. Also have beneficiaries from elderly group and disabled groups in Kirland. They're there at the centre every week, and they have ongoing activities at the centre. It might be arts and crafts or games, sports and so forth. And then we've also had upcycling workshops through Love Loop Collective that Chris Fisher in the Valley is the founder of Love Loop Collective. He ran a 5-part upcycling workshop series together with us last year, and they were designed to show how waste can be transferred into useful and creative products. And the key element here was the connection to our Nature Credits program, where the community cleanups, when waste are collected from the cleanups and it's used as material for these workshops, and then it helps participants to see the full cycle, basically waste generated, waste collected, and then waste transformed into something of value. And of course, through this process, there was practical creative skills, awareness of waste, environmental impact, and so forth. And then the first phase of Kokona now being open, we're working with some partners with our core weekly programs that happen every week at the centre. So currently we have, well, in fact, when I say currently, we piloted our Nature Credits program last year, and that's where the Nature Connect Hub and the Learning Hub connect. Participants take part in either village or beach cleanups, alien plant clearing, tree planting, and then they earn nature credits. And then these credits they can transfer for training and skills development opportunities. And this is very powerful because taking responsibility for nature leads directly to learning and opportunity for these members. It reinforces positive environmental behavior, and it also builds ownership. We have a partnership with Cultural Connections, where the Eco Youth Circle runs weekly. It's delivered by Cultural Connections. It runs a weekly session with nature-based learning, life skills development, and it helps build confidence and self-awareness of youth. It gives youth a bit of a sense of belonging, a stronger connection to nature. They go out on outings regularly. They've recently just did a hike at the Salt River, and they've also just been at a camp where they spend time, the group of youngsters spend time with camps with other groups of Eco Youth Circle members. We've also got a partnership with Build STEM. They connected to the Young Engineering that some of you might know about, but they deliver hands-on STEM learning at the Kokona Learning Hub. There's 2 programs, a Big Builders program for younger children and the Bricks Challenge for a little bit older, and they run 2 classes every week. It's Lego-based learning. For the little ones, you can see it's not Lego, but the older kids would build different designs, and they learn about models, solutions, they learn engineering skills, STEM skills, and basically it's obviously critical, as a lot of people don't always have access. So we also trained 6 community members as assistant instructors, and they are now training as assistant. They're actually operating as assistant instructors. They'll be assistant instructors for 1-year apprenticeship, and then by 2027 they'll become lead facilitators in the program. We also have weekly adolescent support sessions with the Community Care Hub, where we've got a sister who she facilitates safe and supportive space for young people where adolescents can receive homework support, They can talk openly about challenges they're facing. They get guidance on issues such as relationships, peer pressure, life decisions. And it basically creates a trusted environment where they can feel heard and supported, maybe something they can't tell their parents at home. And of course, this is very important because people don't always have access to these safe spaces. So the centre also acts as a safe space for some of these groups. The Community Care Hub, so that brings together all our different partners. You can see some of the partners there in the slide. They basically support physical and mental well-being. It might be health awareness and education. We've had diabetes training, mental health support, life skills and guidance. These workshops have run this year. And they basically provide a space and a platform to our community care network. It includes Neisner Hospital, includes partners like Plet Aid, Wrap the Crags, which is recovery addiction support group, and so forth, and basically strengthens overall well-being in the community. So our outputs plan for phase 2, so that is moving from the foundational phase of setting everything up to actual implementation. So we've got prioritized outputs, and you can see basically we want to establish Kokona as its own MPC. We want to implement weekly learning hub programs. So focus on the learning hub. We want to develop the computer lab. We need to get some funds for computers to be put in the lab. And then we're going to develop our first online and hybrid training programs at the learning hub. We want to build facilitator capacity and leadership. Youth Connect programs. We want to, basically a big priority is helping youth connect to a sense of purpose. Of course, connect that to our nature credit program. So it was piloted last year. We want to now scale that up and connect the nature hub and the learning hub together. Of course, we want our monitoring systems up and running from the beginning. And then, of course, sustainability is very important. What does the future hold? So for sustainability, we need partner co-delivery. So we need to continue to work with partners like the ones that I mentioned to strengthen our networks, to strengthen the programs, to develop a community facilitator pipeline so that we have local facilitators, not external facilitators, so apprenticeship programs, leadership programs, and that sort of thing. I mentioned a system at the computer lab, a learning management system. We want to be able to, in the future, be able to maybe charge for some of the programs for external members. To also, we want to start reducing donor dependency over time. The aim is not to create reliance, but to build a system that can sustain itself over time. So it's important to recognize that this is a really long-term pathway. Of course, we're right in the beginning, and to do it properly, we have to think of the long term. We're looking at outcomes down the line. Building capacity, shifting behavior, strengthening systems does not happen quickly. It requires constant engagement, it requires trust building, and sustained investment over time. So short-term outputs can be achieved quickly, but that lasting change that we want, that behavioral change that we want, particularly behavioral change towards the environment, it develops progressively. So the focus isn't really on the immediate results, but it's on building the system that becomes stronger, becomes more embedded, and more self-sustaining over time. So what is the key insight here from the behavioral change program? I think the key insight from this work is that behavioral change doesn't happen in isolation. So it requires alignments across 3 core domains. If we had to look at those 3, the first would be capability. So people need the skills, they need the knowledge, and they need the access to act. The second is conditions. So there must be stability, there must be resources, there must be real opportunities to apply those skills. And then the third is social systems. So behavior is shaped by norms, relationships, the wider institutional environment, and these 3 are all interdependent. So if one is missing, behavior change can be limited or not sustained over time. So for example, you may be able to build skills, but without opportunity, those skills can't be used. And this is why a lot of traditional approaches do fail if you look at a social ecological system and social side of conservation, because they often focus on a single dimension rather than the system as a whole. So the key takeaway, I suppose, is sustained behavioral change requires all these 3 domains to be strengthened together. And it's simple important that behavioral change is system dependent, and we must see well-being and conservation as inseparable. So long-term conservation requires these integrated approaches, and lasting conservation outcomes depend on people. And people's behavior reflects the systems that they live within. So if we can change the system, then we can change the outcome. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there. Thank you.